Rugna delivers unflinching gore, body mutilations, and gut-wrenching scenes that push boundaries, leaving even hardened horror fans shaken. I was like, whoa. The popcorn scene got me.
Yep.
I was like, okay, wow, we're going there.
There was one point where I was just like this, and I was like, I know stuff's happening. It's cool. I'll find out, you know?
Yeah,
and that was one of the scenes where I was just like, yeah, oh, she is doing that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's happening in front of me.
I'm going to dissociate for a little bit, and we'll come back.
Hi, I'm Gabe.
And I'm Kat.
And we're the Ghouls Next Door. We are the evil lurking.
Yeah. Oh, I don't want to be evil.
Yeah,
but like inevitably we all are. We had that discussion in our Us episode.
We did. Sometimes you end up evil a little bit. Yeah. We're the Ghouls Next Door, a media literacy show from a horror lens where we explore the real life, historical, psychological, and folklore influences behind our cinematic fears. And today, closing out our Satanic Panic series, we are talking about When Evil Lurks.
And it does. It's just maybe not Satan sometimes. Maybe it's just like the government or like Monsanto or, you know, corporations. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's the devil, I guess. I don't know. Who could tell me, you know?
Who could say that's not what the devil is?
Yeah, maybe that's who controls Monsanto. We'll find out.
Yeah.
Well, we won't,
Evil
but
be
like
lurking.
Eventually. Exactly. Gabe, you get it. You're picking this. We're on the same page.
Lurking. Yeah. It is an Argentinian film, and it's very much that, in that it does not abide by the same horror rules that maybe we take for granted as American horror viewers, you know, frequently, in that like it's not holding back. It's not pulling any punches. There's a lot of really gruesome death, and it goes there. It really does. You be going there. And it's just very interesting. I think something I enjoy whenever we cover foreign films is that horror just is different in other places, and like the way that people react to horror, the way that they're interpreting it and what happens is just so unique and different, and it makes sense for where they are and the influences and the things that are about, you know, in their existence in that place in the world versus like our lived experience is so different. We're like, why are they doing this? Why is this happening? And it can be really stressful. I know a lot of people get mad because they're just like, they're making all these terrible decisions. But they were trying to make good ones. In all honesty.
Yeah, and like Argentina, which I'll talk about a little bit, is super Catholic. So like the religious spin is pretty spot on to probably like the vibe of what, like, not the events, but like literally like the taking it, making decisions based on like what their religious things are makes sense in the context.
Yeah, and the where you are and your connection to religion is going to impact that. Like that's what we saw a lot in the Satanic Panic that we were covering that was American focused, right? Like there is definitely an influence of the way that America has a relationship with religion, and specifically Christianity and like American Christianity, which looks so much different than anywhere else. And it has had this really weird effect on culture in America and just like the way that we view good and evil and, you know, good, bad, who should be here, who shouldn't be here, that kind of thing. And so, like you're the way that you operate around religion in a country can really influence how you react to crisis. Traumas, crisis, and like hysteria and fear and uncertainty too. Yeah. Like if we don't have the answers and you jump to a religion of some sort, it can really twist the results.
Yeah. And because that's like your framework for understanding evil. When it's what you know, it's what you got. But it's depends on. In this case, he did a bad job. So
He did do a bad job.
He didn't make a good choice, as you said, but I think that's very human.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he was supposed to fail. That's gonna happen.
Which is all satanic panic is the devil
You
wins.
fail. The devil wins. Yeah, that is something that we found in nearly all of this. You know, I think Immaculate had an open ending. But where is she gonna go? How far is she gonna go? She's committed a lot of murder, you know?
She had her entire self cut open. Like, what do you
mean? Exactly. So I think, like, in all of the things that we've seen, where Satan or evil prevails. It is all-encompassing and powerful and scheming. And so, like, what are these films trying to tell us? Why are they making us feel so bad about it?
Yeah. It's like it's systemic or something.
Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes it does feel hopeless. When you're going up against big bads and you're just a person, it can really honestly feel like it's insurmountable and impossible to defeat, and that it is always a few steps ahead because it has the power, the wherewithal, and the resources to be several steps ahead of you always. Yeah. Well, as we're finishing out that Satanic Panic series, make sure you give us a like and a subscribe. Let us know what you think, if you've seen this film, how you feel about the other films that we've covered for this series, if there are other Satanic Panic-y films that you think in the future you'd like to see covered on our show. Let us know. And what you think of the gore and violence that we see in When Evil Lurks. Yeah. There's a lot. It is. I think this was one of the more brutal films we've covered this year.
Yeah, and it was interesting too because a lot of it was like, this was the scariest movie of the year, and I even texted you. I was like, I don't remember feeling scared. I remember being like, ow, oh geez, they're doing that, and like like this, but like not because I was terrified or like I was like on edge or whatever. It was more like, oh geez, I don't want to see that.
Yeah,
but like not like the plot was scary, but like I didn't get like jump scares or like that kind of like seeping, need to be constantly on edge at all moments kind of thing that some horror will do. It was different. It was definitely like more ouch.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so hard to say something is the scariest of the year because fear is subjective. Yeah. So if like people are really afraid and unsettled by graphic violence and gore and like and children are involved, like absolutely that could be really terrifying. And the same thing, like people who are really afraid of long legs, right? Where I'm like, that was not very scary at all. It was pretty bland. But for some people, like just the serial killer aspect of it, and it's like, and if you are religious, there's like parts of that seem,
I think
it could be scary.
I wasn't raised very religious, so I think it just isn't as embedded in my fears.
Yeah. So it's just not you're not the audience.
I'm not. That's okay. But like The Ring freaks me out because it's like those. I don't know. It's just that. Well, I know it was scary. It was just like different. It was like more gory and it's more. Doesn't scare me. It just upsets me.
It's like I was even thinking like I've been reading a lot of horror, and I was reading stuff that was like supernatural scary, and I was like, reading. I was like, I'm fine. I can go about my day. But then I was reading this like slasher. And, like, there was, like, a killer and it's, like, stalking people. And it's, like, in the house. And it's, you know, where are they? Who are they? What's going on? These people are in danger. And I, like, literally, like, was like, I gotta put on all the lights on to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, that's fair.
I was like, I'm like, checking the curtains. I'm like, there could be a person in here.
If they were more, like, sneaking around, I think that would have freaked me out more. But they were always, like, in your face. You know what I mean? Like, they were never hiding. Like, it was lurking, I guess. But, like, it wasn't. You weren't like looking for it in the background or like waiting for it to jump. Like you knew it was coming. Where like that scares me less than the lurking or like they're in the house but you don't know where. And like that freaks me out too. Like it definitely is a different kind of horror.
I will say with the evil that's here and the people, like when you know they're corrupted and they show up and they like you know, walk in and they're like regular, or they call your phone and stuff like that. I was like, that's unsettling. Because if like you as a person knew that person's dead, something horrible just happened to them, and now they're calling your phone.
Yeah,
like,
no, it's definitely unsettling.
Dude.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So yeah, different strokes for different folks, right? So let us know if it was scary to you. But let's hop in and let me tell you about When Evil Lurks, and some of the things I think are done pretty brilliantly, and why I think it is a really interesting horror film, and I did enjoy it. I just had to like stomach a lot more than I was intending to have to stomach.
Watch.
No.
No. Especially not popcorn, and you'll get that joke later. It's not it's a messed up joke, but it's a joke. All the same. Yeah.
So, When Evil Lurks is from 2023, and it's about, in a remote village, two brothers find a demon-infected man just about to give birth to evil itself. They decide to get rid of the body, only to end up unintentionally spreading chaos. It is directed by Demián Rugna. It's always like that. And to be fair, it wasn't their idea to get rid of him.
There's that other guy who like got knocked out immediately, so didn't have to deal with any of the consequences for long term,
He was intending to deal with the consequences. He was trying. Yeah. He just got before he had the chance. You're right. Yeah. But When Evil Lurks is an unrelenting, gore-laden Argentinian horror film that delves into the terror of isolation, faith, and always a horror favorite, the uncanny presence of children.
Yeah, they were doing that.
Heavy on that. And Director Rugna was like, it was really hard to work with kids, not because of the kids, like the actors were great, it's just the laws in Argentina made it really hard, and he was like, I can't do anything.
And I was like, that protects the kids in a lot of ways,
absolutely. It was like, then we hear about what they were doing to the kids on It Chapter 2 or whatever, but I was like, for you not being able to do anything, you did a lot.
Yeah,
you figured it out, buddy. Like, props to you. You got around the system. Because I knew what happened. It was gross.
The kids were there the whole time in my mind.
They were awful. It was great. But as the description said, it is set in a small, remote village where help is far from reach, and the story follows two brothers, Pedro and Jimmy, who come upon a decaying, sinister corpse that signals something truly malevolent is afoot. A lot of confusion as soon as they see that. It's like, who's this? Who did this to them? And that discovery of this corpse leads them to Uriel, who is a man who's showing signs of a devastating demonic possession that threatens to engulf the entire community. And it appears as this like illness, like he's like swollen, and like I said, possibly going to give birth to evil. Yeah. And that's the thing that people know about. So, against the advice of locals who warn them of the entity's terrifying power, Pedro and Jimmy attempt to stop the evil from spreading. Everyone knows what to do, but no one does it. Is the theme of this film. And the film is full of incidents of them. We know people ain't putting the masks on, even though we told you put the masks on. So the film is full of incidents of them trying to do the right thing. First, they try to get rid of the possessed guy before this demonic force can spread. And then they try to, alert their family and friends and save them. Then they just keep... Then they're like, oh, what if we kill it this way? What if we do that? Like, stop, buddy, stop.
Because don't use guns. And just keep doing it.
They're like, let me get more guns. And their efforts inadvertently make things worse. And the demonic force begins to unleash horrific chaos upon the village. And the brothers, their families, and the entire village are in survival mode against a relentless evil that seems to spread like a virus. When Evil Lurks is a visceral, folklore-infused horror that turns good intentions into horrific outcomes. Rugna delivers unflinching gore, body mutilations, and gut-wrenching scenes that push boundaries, leaving even hardened horror fans shaken. I was like, whoa! The popcorn scene got me.
Yep.
I was like, okay, wow, we're going there.
There was one point where I was just like this, and I was like, I know stuff's happening. It's cool. I'll find out,
Yeah,
and that was one of the scenes where I was just like, yeah, oh, she is doing that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's happening in front of me.
I'm gonna dissociate for a little bit, and we'll come back. I
was like, I'm glad I don't have any children right now. I don't know.
Yeah, this would have hit different. This would have hit different if I had human babies.
Dude,
it would definitely, like, I could empathize, but like there's another level, I imagine.
You can
If you,
sympathize.
yeah,
You
I can
can't
sympathize,
empathize.
but I can't empathize, and I can empathize when I'm eventually in that situation, with hopefully not
Yeah.
this situation happening.
Yeah, far from this. Yeah, set in a richly crafted rural world where superstition and primal fear are woven into daily life, the film builds in an inescapable sense of dread that lingers long after the credits roll.
Yeah.
I think one of the bigger themes, not only in just this film, but in, like I said, the Satanic Panic series of films that we've covered, is this idea of a failure of faith, where faith is not enough, and people
Yeah.
are holding on to it, and it's really unfortunate that it isn't, because it can so often be enough. Like
Yeah.
it is genuinely enough for people. It helps in a lot of ways, and can be something that gets you through some dark times. Not for
Yeah.
these films. Faith
No.
is a poor weapon against the satanic forces. So
Yeah.
when Evil Lurks roots its horror in the rich, eerie folklore and societal fears of Latin American culture. And Rugna immerses us in a rural Argentinian world where superstitions, curses, and demonic threats aren't just stories, they're a part of daily life. It's a film unlike many horror films because the people are quick to believe the horror is real. And this is a challenge that usually takes up most of the runtime of other horror films. Usually it's someone being like, the evil is real, and everyone's like, no, you're exaggerating. This, they're like, evil is real, and they're like, okay, yeah. Here's what you do about it. Like, immediately they're like, yeah, I know about that. My second cousin's best friend in the other town, twice removed, had the same thing.
We gotta take this serious. Yeah.
Yeah, like everyone has a story of this happening to them.
Yeah.
There's just well-known stories, procedures, and childhood songs that confirm the very real threat of the supernatural. Like, it's everyone knows. They're like, you ever heard of this? And they're like, yeah.
Of course.
And Rugna leans heavily into rural Argentinian folklore and deep-seated superstitions to shape when evil lurks. So in many parts of Latin America, especially these rural areas, the supernatural is far more than a story. Beliefs in demonic possession, curses, and evil forces are part of daily life, often merging with religious practices to form a unique blend of traditional Catholicism and indigenous mysticism. There's an intense pull between deep-rooted religious rituals and dark supernatural forces. I think there's always been an interesting way that like Latin American cultures blend Catholicism, which is brought to them, with their indigenous practices, which is what they were brought up on. And so it's such an interesting blend always, even just like in Puerto Rican folklore. It gets really, it's like, how'd you do that? So Latin American society, especially in Argentina, wears its Catholic roots on its sleeve. And when Evil Lurks uses this cultural foundation to brilliantly explore the limits of faith in the face of unimaginable evil, Rugna doesn't just sprinkle in a bit of religion. He throws viewers right into the middle of a community that leans hard on their beliefs, clinging to prayers and rituals like their life rafts. But these rituals don't even come close to holding back the sinister force creeping into their lives. Faith, tradition, community aren't enough to fight the darkness closing in. And as the villagers grapple with evil that feels unstoppable, the film brings up a gut-wrenching question. What do we do when faith fails you? It's a powerful twist on the horror genre, tapping into modern anxieties about the limits of belief in a world where some threats just feel too big to pray away.
Yep.
Which, The Conjuring would, debate. Yeah. Conjuring's like, oh, you just get a good prayer going. You don't even have to be a priest. You just have to believe
you can do
hard
both,
enough.
Man. Like, you can pray and then also do something,
You can pray and put on a mask.
Yeah, you can do both at the same time.
Yeah. And a common theme, as I said, that we found in the Satanic Panic series is that this isn't just about demonic possession. It's about the terrifying realization that sometimes the beliefs we lean on for strength may crumble when we need them the most. And director Demián Rugna also draws from his own fears, channeling the dread of facing something unknowable and unstoppable. Fascinated by the horror of losing control, he crafts a story that's as psychological as it is supernatural, exploring how the unknown can paralyze and consume us when there's no hope of escape. There's the other side of the coin, besides faith, is isolation, contamination, and rural dread in Argentina. This is a big motivation for what we're seeing. It's kind of like the faith and religion aspect is like the clothing on
Yeah.
it. And then this, like, isolation and the rural life in Argentina is like the body of the work. So the remote village heightens the terror, capturing the nerve-wracking isolation of small communities cut off from outside help. With no access to medical aid or police support, residents are left vulnerable, amplifying their helplessness against threats, human or supernatural. And this real-world isolation fuels the tension, portraying a community unraveling under the weight of a malevolent force they can't comprehend or escape. Because where are they going to go? They don't have the money to go anywhere. And the director was inspired by the isolated rural communities of Argentina, where he'd learned they were being plagued by pesticides specifically. The pesticides infected them, Rugna told Polygon in an interview titled When Evil Lurks Director Says His Staggering Horror Movie is Really About Pesticides. He says, kids were born with cancer, and sometimes you see something in the news, but then there's nothing more to say and you forget the image. They're in the middle of nothing, the middle of poverty. They must do work for less than a couple of dollars, and they're all ill. After you turn off the television, you forget. But they're still there. They are still probably going to die. And Argentina is contaminated with glyphosate, which can cause illness for families and livestock in the area. And Rugna spoke more on this horror in an interview with Fangoria titled Curses, Contaminants, and Canines, Demián Rugna on When Evil Lurks, sharing that all the time you see a horizon of fields with little houses in the middle of nowhere. And I thought, damn, what kind of drama are these people living there? They might be contaminated, sick, and no one knows anything. And you drive by in a car or fly over, and these people are still there. That made me think, what if those people who are there, seemingly unnoticed by anyone, instead of being sick, have a demon in the family?
Yeah.
Who would know? Like, you literally know nothing about them. And that just exploration of, like, us passing over that information, like, we see that now. Like, how often are we inundated with horrors that are happening somewhere else, and we just have to keep going on in our life? You know, it's so hard to hold all those realities in our one body and mind. And by drawing on this rural reality, Rugna taps into an atmosphere of dread that feels really familiar. It's a place where even well-meaning actions spiral into catastrophe, and the creeping presence of evil feels uncontainable. This mix of isolation and vulnerability shapes the film's horrors, turning the villagers' fight against a demonic force into a haunting reflection on how things can fall apart when people are left to confront the unknown alone. And in that interview with Polygon, he explains the decision to terrify this vulnerable community specifically, saying, when I decided to make a movie with some kind of exorcism, I thought, okay, but what happens if the people cannot reach a priest? All the Exorcist movies happen in the city, in a big house. But what if we're in the middle of nothing, in a poor house with poor people who nobody cares for? Even the owner of the land wants to get rid of them, to burn their houses. It happens in my own country all the time. Not the demons, but the rest.
Yeah.
I do like the clarifying.
Yeah,
There's no demons.
Yeah.
There's real people demons, you know? Like the government. And his approach to horror goes beyond shock and gore. It's a dive straight into Argentina's rural soul, where horror is all about primal cultural fears that feel as real as the soil underfoot. By centering the story around two gauchos, Pedro and Jimmy, Rugna enriches this tension. And these Argentinian cowboys, which is what they are well-meaning regular men with little in the way of faith or outside support, embodying the resilient, no-nonsense spirit of the gaucho. And their lives are marked by solitude, a choice to live removed from society, where the peace of isolation quickly turns into a terrifying vulnerability when things go wrong. And gauchos live on the edge of the unknown, and the film uses this lonesome existence as the horror backdrop, because when you're cut off from the rest of the world, even a small threat can become terrifyingly unsurmountable. There's no cavalry coming for you. And the quiet peace of the countryside becomes suffocating, and suddenly, isolation isn't a choice, it's a trap. When Evil Lurks dives into Argentina's folklore, questioning what happens when faith and tradition fail against an unstoppable evil. Rugna doesn't just tell a ghost story, he dismantles the comforts of community, leaving characters to confront an evil that feels all too real. Madness spreads like a virus, and for Rugna, it's a modern take on fascism, the way the media can twist minds, planting ideas that seem right, but slowly, insidiously, push people into darker places. And it's a chilling blend of folklore, rugged individualism, and sheer terror, capturing that unnerving place where resilience and helplessness collide. And yeah, I just feel bad for every person in it because they're all trying their best. And I think that's what struck me was it was all well intentioned. Like, even when they're not listening to each other. And it's almost kind of funny too, like when the abuela is like telling the story of like, oh, there's a song that tells you what not to do, and then it's like one of the things is like, don't say the name of the devil, and they're like, the devil has a name, and then she says like 7 of them.
Yeah.
And he's like, could you not? Like, you just said don't do that.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's funny because it's just like they believe it and at the same time don't believe it.
Yeah.
And then just the last tangent is just that they do have a character in here that is autistic. And I do, like, I'm always hesitant when we see someone who's neurodivergent in horror or, you know, on the spectrum in horror, anything like that, because it gets scary. And I will say,
yeah, sometimes it's not handled respectfully. Yeah.
Yeah. And I won't say it was handled disrespectfully, but it still was leaning a little bit towards like the special like neurodivergent person, because like he existed just to be like, his brain is different, so the devil has a hard time getting in there.
Yeah. And I think in its way it's because a lot of the pesticide chemicals cause developmental differences and stuff in like babies as well as like during pregnancy. So I think it was maybe playing upon that or like touching upon that. Yeah. So like I get why they included that. It was important in a lot of ways to include something of that variety. But it was also like really hard to watch some of the situations they were put in. And like yeah.
It's
some of the like words that were
vulnerable
used by the mom too was like also like, oh geez. I know it was like a demon inside of her saying those things, but it was still like rough.
I will say it did drive up like the humanity of the father, in that like you could see that he he wasn't with the kids, but he was still like he still longed for them.
Yeah,
in
he kept
isolation.
the apple ice
like he
cream.
kept the apple ice cream. Yeah, like, and those things, like, and he was trying. He was like, whatever it takes, I just gotta take my kids and go. And I think that was really like it gave him a lot of care that he didn't have elsewhere, because otherwise this is like, what's this guy doing? He's just a mess. So it did give him some like vulnerability and like softness that we were missing, but then I feel like he lost it because he didn't really care in the end. I was like, what are you doing, buddy?
Yeah, it's just like in his trying to help, he just did a lot of harm and like damage. And I think it speaks to a little bit the fact that like he didn't really have control much in the first place because he was not with the resources he needed to fight this evil. You know what I mean? And that's like the situation a lot of people in these rural areas face, is they have this big insurmountable evil of Monsanto and these pesticide companies, and then they don't have the resources to seek the medical care they need. They only have the religious views to base the experiences they're having. It's like he didn't stand a chance against this, and that was hard because yeah, you knew it was doomed. Like you were like hoping like he'd figure it out and that there'd be something. And even in those opportunities where he maybe could have done something in this situation, we were like, is this even real? What's happening? It was rough. It's a rough watch, but good. I agree. Like it was a good watch. Like I enjoyed it, even though it was very ouch. It was very different ouch than our other ouch films that we had covered, like Talk to Me and I Saw the TV Glove. Very different ouch. It was ouch and like the gore and just like, ow, it's sad. Like this is sad and there's not a lot of
it's hopeless
hope. Yeah, like this is not like you don't end in a positive place with this film, and that is hard. Especially like I guess like when we like horror to have like next steps sometimes. I don't know if we like have next steps. For how to deal with these kinds of things, because he's talking about a very real problem that exists. It's not demons, it's pesticides, and it's like, what do we do now with that? So I don't know, but As Gabe touched on, this film was influenced by Argentinian struggle against agrochemicals and the health risks they present to the population of Argentina, specifically the extensive use of pesticides. And this has led to significant environmental and health impacts. Specifically, pesticide exposure is linked to various health issues such as birth defects, reproductive disorders, and chronic diseases. Those living near agricultural fields are at higher risk of health impacts from these agrochemicals, and some pesticides act as endocrine disruptors, which I had to look up because I had no idea what that meant, but it means relating to or denoting glands which secrete hormones. So it messes with your hormones, essentially. And impacts like how stuff is directly introduced to your blood. So the endocrine system is basically like your hormones and other products directly into the blood secreting. This messes with that, leading to things like long-term health impacts like obesity, diabetes, and other metabolic disorders because it messes with your hormones. And the film takes us on when showcasing a rural community impacted by a seemingly demonic plague, taking an overtly religious perspective on something that otherwise might just be viewed as like a medical issue, which is very true to like the Argentinian experience. And this is based on a very real way. Many rural communities in Argentina are heavily influenced by their religious and spiritual beliefs. And it's ultimately just like really messed up, a lot of the stuff that I read. So essentially, environmental contamination is another major issue. Pesticides have been detected in drinking water sources, posing a significant risk to public health. Studies have found various pesticides, including their degradation products in water used for human consumption, as well as they took like blood samples from like kids in the area, and they all had pesticides in their blood. Additionally, pesticides persist in the environment, contaminating soil and entering the food chain through biomagnification. And this process increases their concentration and toxicity, affecting both human and animal health. So kind of like we were talking about like fracking, you know, like a big company buys land and like messes it up, and then everyone around that land who did not sign up for this is directly impacted by it. Like it messes with their health, it messes with their livelihood, it messes with their day-to-day life. And because they're isolated in these rural areas, no one's looking at them. Like as the director was saying, like they see them for a second and then they're gone, and then you can detach yourself from the means of production. Argentina is specifically an agricultural place in that it is one of the biggest exporters of soybeans and sunflower seeds. So like any soybeans and sunflowers that are consumed around the world, especially if you're thinking like vegan stuff, produced in Argentina at the cost of these rural farmers. They also produce large quantities of corn and wheat for export, and the introduction of genetically modified crops and no tillage technology has increased the use of herbicides and other chemicals because essentially they're not messing with it, but the bugs still want in. So in some cases, under-regulated and without proper training, Monsanto is a big player in this. So in the article titled Birth Defects, Cancer in Argentina Linked to Agrochemicals, AP Investigation from CTV News, which Gabe, thank you for that. They speak to Tomasi, a worker who was exposed to these chemicals firsthand. And the article states, for 3 years, Tomasi was routinely exposed to chemicals as he pumped pesticides into tanks of crop dusters. Now he's near death from polyneuropathy, a debilitating neurological disorder which has left him wasted and shriveled. I prepared millions of liters of poison without any kind of protection, no gloves, masks, or special clothing, he said. I didn't know anything. I only learned later what it did to me after contacting scientists. The poison comes in liquid concentrates in containers with lots of precautions to take when applying it, Tomasi explained, but nobody takes precautions. This is one of many reports of pesticides being applied without recommended safety precautions, leading to high levels of exposure among operators as well as the nearby residents. So essentially there are like rules, but no one is checking that the rules are being followed, and the government is benefiting exponentially by the money that they gain from these exports, that they only allow business insiders to do the surveying to be like, is this poison? Will it kill people? And they don't feel incentivized to actually check and like see what it's doing because they're making a bunch of money off of it. So The responsibility for these issues lies with multiple stakeholders. The Argentine government and regulatory bodies play a significant role, but there are gaps in their oversight. Specifically, the government relies on figures from business chambers, bias, for pesticide usage data, as there are no official statistics or systematic environmental and health surveys. In fact, the CTV article seemed like further testing was discouraged by Monsanto, like, and the government. Like they have evidence of like workers getting sick and people in the community getting sick, but they can't link it back to specifically the pesticides, even though some people are doing the research themselves. So while glyphosate is one of the world's safest herbicides, farmers use it in higher concentrates and mix it in much more toxic poisons, such as 2,4-D, which the U.S. military used in Agent Orange to defoliate jungles during the Vietnam War. And in 2006, a division of Argentina's agricultural ministry recommended adding caution labels, urging that mixtures of glyphosate and more toxic chemicals be limited to farm areas far from homes and population centers. The recommendation was ignored according to the federal audit. The government relies on industry research approved by the EPA, which said May 1st that there is no indication that glyphosate is a neurotoxic chemical and there is no need for a developmental neurotoxicity study. And it's like, actually, it seems like there is if you have your workers are just getting sick. And from neurotoxic illnesses. Like he literally said he has
neuropathy,
a neurological disorder. Like that, it seems to correlate. You know what I mean?
After touching it, it's very much, it makes you think of like the girls who were using like the paint, the girls who were using the paint and they were like licking the paintbrushes to like do it, and then they got cancer.
Yeah.
Like, good. No one told them.
Yeah.
They're like, this is just a bright green. So nice.
Yeah. So although Argentina's pesticide regulations align with those leading agricultural countries, they focus on acute toxicity and often overlook chronic effects. So they're like, will this kill you right away? No.
So it
will it kill you long term?
We're not looking.
Yeah. And enforcement of existing regulations is also weak, contributing to widespread misuse and improper disposal of pesticide containers. Like there's instances of them burning, burying, or reusing empty pesticide containers, which just makes it worse. So the agricultural industry, including business chambers and farmers, also bear responsibility. Business chambers provide the data, or not enough, on pesticide usage, but may have conflicts of interest, that affect the accuracy and transparency of the information. And as I said before, economic and social cultural factors influence how pesticides are used and stored, and some farmers just don't recognize that they're dangerous, so they'll burn them, bury them, or reuse them, and that is going to exacerbate further environmental contamination. International market demands further complicate the issue. As I said, Argentina's position as a major exporter of cereals and oilseed crops drives the intensive use of agrochemicals to meet global market demands. The economic pressure often outweighs environmental and health considerations, especially for those in power with the most control over what could be changed and the least to lose. So what is being done about it? Argentina has prohibited 18 specific pesticides, a number comparable to neighboring countries like Uruguay and Chile, but significantly less than Brazil. Monitoring and reporting of pesticide use rely on figures for business chambers, as we said. So there's not so much being done on a governmental side, but there are community actions that have played a significant role in fighting against it, with local residents campaigning against the use of pesticides near their homes due to the association with health issues like birth defects. These campaigns have led to the introduction of safety measures in some areas, and additionally, Argentina is now part of the SPRINT project, which aims to assess the risk of pesticide use and make recommendations for transitioning away from reliance on these chemicals. The project includes comparing findings in Europe and South America to inform better practices, and environmental and health assessments have been conducted to analyze the presence of pesticides and their degradation products in drinking water, highlighting the need for clear rules and integrated knowledge to ensure public health. Efforts are also being made to raise public awareness about the environmental and health risks associated with pesticide use, aiming to inform policymakers and public about the steps to protect residents from pesticide-related diseases. These measures indicate like progress in a sense. But it does kind of tie, but it's like with this kind of insurmountable thing, and that's like these big companies and governments. It requires regulation. It requires consistent community action. It requires international collaboration and to like work with the companies to be like, hey, we don't need that much actually, or stop buying as much so that they stop pushing it so hard, you know, and public awareness to mitigate the risks associated with the chemical use in Argentina. So a big piece of why the film, as we see, and a big reason why we chose this for Satanic Panic is that religion plays a big role in this, in the view of demons, and Satan plays a big role. So as we see in the film and throughout the series, religion significantly influences the perception of horrors that we face and how we understand them. When it comes to using religion as a lens for health problems, the fact that 80% of Argentina's population is Catholic brings some context as to why this film is included in our Satanic Panic series. In many rural communities, religious beliefs and practices are deeply intertwined with daily life and health perceptions. For instance, some individuals may interpret health issues as divine will or punishment, which can affect their willingness to seek medical intervention or advocate for regulatory changes. And religious leaders often hold substantial sway in these communities, and their views on the environmental and health issues can shape public opinion and behavior. If religious leaders emphasize the importance of stewardship on the earth and health for their congregants, they can mobilize the community to stand up against Monsanto and these harmful agricultural practices. But conversely, if they downplay the risks or frame them as unavoidable aspects of modern life or the devil, or, you know, if they make it that, it can lead to complacency and acceptance of the status quo. Thus, religion plays a dual role, either as a catalyst for change or an awareness, or as a barrier to recognizing and addressing the health impacts of herbicides and agrochemicals. So it's like looking at this plague that is greatly harming a lot of people and saying it's demons. So you bring the church in to heal them when they need medicine, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not exactly what happened in this film, but that's like, it's a pretty decent
kind of what happened.
Yeah.
He definitely looked like he was ill, and I thought when we first were watching that it might be an actual epidemic happening.
Yeah.
And then it was demons.
Yeah. Sometimes it's demons, I guess. But like in this case, it's very much like this is like the pesticide thing is the idea is that lots of rural communities believe in the devil and demons, and like the religious context helps view some of these issues as like curses. Like this is something, I did something bad and this is why this is happening to me. Not like an evil corporation is poisoning my water and food and causing harm to me. So Catholicism is the dominant religion in Argentina due to a combination of historical, cultural, and political factors. As Gabe mentioned, the roots of Catholicism in Argentina trace back to Spanish colonization in the 16th century, when Spanish missionaries and settlers brought the Catholic faith to the region, or forced the Catholic faith into the region. The Catholic Church played a central role in the colonization process, establishing missions, schools, and hospitals, and integrating itself into the fabric of Argentine society. The influence of Catholicism was further solidified through the country's political history. After gaining independence from Spain in the early 19th century, Argentina's leaders sought to maintain strong ties with the Catholic Church to promote social cohesion and stability. In essence, to not rock the boat or enact substantial change from what was already there. You just aren't under the arm of Spain. So in the 1853 Constitution, which remains the foundation of Argentina's legal system, explicitly recognized the preeminence of the Catholic Church, stating in Article 2 that the federal government supports the Roman Catholic apostolic religion. Culturally, Catholicism has been deeply embedded into Argentine identity. Major life events such as baptisms, weddings, and funerals often are conducted within the church, and the Catholic holidays and traditions are widely observed. The church's teachings and moral values have influenced social norms and behaviors, reinforcing its dominance. And additionally, the Catholic Church has historically been a significant provider of education and social services in Argentina. Many schools, universities, and charitable organizations are run by the church, further entrenching its influence in everyday life. While Argentina is a pluralistic society with a growing presence of other religious communities, the historical, cultural, and institutional entrenchment of Catholicism has ensured its continued dominance in the country. Just like there are other religions in America, but it's Christianity times 20,000. Like there are every single law that we have, for the most part, is drenched in some variety of moral something, Christianity something, even though we have other religions in our country. So similar vibes. Predominantly Catholic, many Argentinians adhere to the church's teachings on the existence of Satan and demonic forces as real entities that can influence human behaviors and events. Gabe touched on this in one of our previous episodes. The Catholic Church teaches that Satan is real, a fallen angel who opposes God and seeks to lead people into sin. And this belief is reflected in various religious practices, such as exorcisms or prayers for protection against evil. I even saw like a article, which it was like on Daily Mail, so like take that with a grain of salt, but it was like about a school that like you pay $38, they can teach you how to exorcism in Argentina. So I was like, that was weird, but I don't know how true it is because it was on Daily Mail, so take that with a grain of salt, but I thought it was interesting. And in rural and traditional communities, these beliefs can be particularly strong, often intertwined with local folklore and superstition. Stories of demonic possession, evil spirits, and the evil eye are common, and people may seek the help of priests or traditional healers to ward off or combat these malevolent forces. And the concept of evil eye is especially prevalent where it's believed that envy or ill will from others can cause harm or misfortune, and various rituals and amulets are used for protection. However, views on demonic and Satan are not like monolithic. In urban areas like the city, the people were a little more hesitant to believe him when he was like, Satan is here, like it's a demon plague. They were like, wait, what? No. They were the people in the cities were the only ones who were like, maybe not, like maybe that's not what it is. Are you sure? So in urban areas and among more secular or progressive segments of the population, these beliefs may be seen as symbolic or metaphorical rather than literal. For some, the idea of Satan and demonic forces represents the struggle between good and evil within human nature and society rather than actual supernatural beings. And the influence of popular culture also plays a role in shaping contemporary views, because films, literature, and media often depict demonic themes, sometimes sensationalizing or reinterpreting traditional beliefs, like this film, for instance, where Evil Lurks uses demonic possession as a metaphor for the broader social issues like contagion and community distrust, reflecting a modern twist on the traditional concepts of evil. The influence of widespread Catholicism influences how daily horrors can be viewed and how they are handled. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the idea that, like, depending on what side the Catholic Church is on, it could either empower people to, you know, fight against the oppressing system, or it's in line with and gets people to obey and be sweet about it.
Yeah. And like also like, so there's a piece of this too, because the whole thing that was interesting is that the Catholic Church's view stance on abortion, which we talked about a lot in Immaculate, is deeply entrenched in Argentina, and the increase of birth defects and also just like harm to babies and children is very present, and they don't have the means to choose to not. Also, that's a thing, which leads to a lot more babies being born with like life harming illnesses that they otherwise wouldn't have to experience, and the moms having to experience that too. So like failed pregnancies not being able to be aborted and stuff like that.
It
so
also makes me think of like Handmaid's Tale, because that's the reason why they're so against the abortions, is like the majority of like either people are not able to have children or they're coming out with defects because of the environment and just the state of the world. And so it's like for people who have a history of being able to do it the right way, the potential to do it quote unquote the right way, like can't like you're not allowed to have choice anymore. I think that's interesting as well. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the point about the boy having being a representative of those issues. It's just like testy. Every time I see it, it's just like, oh, I'm like tensed up now and I'm worried. Just because horror just has a horrible relationship with people.
Disability in general.
Yeah. And so it like it stresses me out. But I mean, for the most part, like a lot of the things that he's exploring, it didn't feel like so much of like a lecture, but it was like a warning. You know, it's like this is what, like, obviously not Satan, right? But that something can come. And if you all are not connected or like listening or following the rules, those kinds of things, or taking care of each other, then it could get like significantly worse.
Yeah, and it like ties back to the whole thing where it's like, if you're fine letting it happen to this group, then you're fine letting it continue to happen and spread, and then eventually they'll come to you. So like that's kind of like what happens in the film, where it starts in the rural areas, and then now the city is impacted.
Yeah.
Now the people in the city are getting sick. Now they're dealing with the impact of the illness. So it's very much like you can look away from the people in the rural areas, but then when it's at your door, what are you gonna do? You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. Also, just want to say, like, I know family is super important, but he really was like, forget that little girl. She ain't mine.
Yeah, that was messed
like,
up.
I don't care about that little girl.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Not
what
my
a scene.
That was messed up. Yeah. And then, then he just results in like his own kids having the whole situation. So the whole time.
But I was just like she counts too. What the F?
Yeah. He just he started to like chase after her, and he was like, not my problem. And then turns around.
I can't do this.
Yeah.
He was like, I gotta prioritize.
He was a complex character.
Yes.
Definitely flawed.
Yeah. He was like, I gotta prioritize. And that seems like it's done. There's actually, I assessed, there's nothing I can do there. Nothing I do about that little girl.
He could have stopped him from using the gun.
He could have, but he tried to. In his defense, he did try. He said it a bunch, and everybody said it all the time, and no one listened.
Yeah, no one listened. Even him.
Even him. Oh, he didn't listen at all. He was losing it at the end. I was like, "You're kids." Yeah.
I mean, he saw a lot of horrible stuff. So, I mean, if anything's going to cause a break in our mental abilities to process things, I think everything they experienced would justify that. So, I don't blame him. At the end, where I'm like, I've seen enough awful.
Yeah.
I resign.
He didn't even see what happened to his younger son.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he had that break in the middle after he gets that phone call.
Yeah.
You know, just on himself and realizing like that he brought that on, you know? Yeah. And if you are someone who can't handle gore, or like if children is a trigger, those kinds of things, no.
Don't watch
not for you.
Yeah.
Not for you. Just listen to this. I'll tell you about it. Because it's like, it's just not it doesn't pull any punches on it, and it has some of the really brutal, historically graphic things that like will just forever
live in your
stay
mind.
In my head. And
I close my eyes and I can see the woman with their child
eating like a popcorn bucket.
Yeah.
What a thing to experience. Yeah. What a thing to think
and
of.
like in that way, I get why people call it the scariest movie of the year. It's just like not scary in the way that I understand what scary is. Like I think of it more as like creepy or like supernatural, as you said, and that was just graphic. I was just graphic, and I was like, yeah, oh Lord.
Yeah, but this was just like a completely unique, like after watching like, you know, movie after movie of satanic whatever, this was truly unique in so many aspects of it, like just what we're seeing on screen, how it's being approached, what it's covering, like so much of it was different. And so I think I'm really appreciative of that.
Yeah.
So
same.
Yeah, I think, you know, being aware of where our food and things come from, and at what expense as like populations are growing, and as you know, certain folks come into power, and thinking of, you know, the ramifications of certain cutbacks and deregulations, and what we're seeing just even here in America, like not this specific pesticides problems, but we're having a listeria outbreak every 2 days, which is revealing that capitalism's a lie. So who competition?
And it's also like the deregulation that took place during the last presidency.
Yeah, but I'm saying like that deregulation coupled with the fact that there's really only 3 companies that own everything. We're seeing that, like the evidence of that. It's like how all the frozen waffles get
this
Listeria.
Is why we want to, the millennials just want to have like a farm. We're like, all of the previous generations are like, leave the farms, go to civilization, go to the cities.
I was like, Pearl, you're wrong.
I just want chickens. I just want chickens.
You're an idiot. Pearl,
I want to make my own bread so it's not filled with chemicals and I can enjoy it.
Pearl, you had all those animals. You had pigs.
I have all these neurological problems that probably wouldn't exist without the poison.
If you had fresh air, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Air? That'd be nice.
Take it for granted. But yeah, that closes out our Satanic Panic series. This is really, I don't want to say fun. That's not really the word I would say. It has been enlightening. I have learned quite a lot in this series that I just threw out the idea. I was like, what if we did this? I saw a trend. And I think, we've been feeling some stress. There's some societal angst that is being represented in media as Satan coming back. And I get it. Like like Satan can be anything, right? Like we can define Satan however we want to define Satan. And if that's the case, like Satan could really be out there. Satan is the industry. Satan is capitalism. Satan is white supremacy. Satan is fascism.
Yeah, it's literally that one show. The show with,
you gotta give me more.
Mike Flanagan.
Midnight Mass?
With the ones with the companies and
the Fall of the House of Usher.
Thank you. Yeah. It's like that.
That whole family was Satan.
He is the demons.
That whole family was Satan. The whole family was Satan. Yeah. Absolutely. So what's your Satan? No, what I will say as a tie-in into this series is that despite what the films are telling us, that Satan always wins, that's not the case, right? Because in the instances in the time periods where Satanic Panic was occurring, whether it's like the 1980s Satanic Panic, the witch trials, the Red Scare, the McCarthy era, even now,
Satan did win.
Satan won in those moments, but we defeated him. Like it was a moment in time, and we got through it. And I think that's the big thing is like it is like it's. We will get through it. We will prevail. We have historically done that. And so it
like when things are horribly oppressive, like people revolt.
Yeah. Like there's only so much we can take.
An empire can't be an empire forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And so take that like as your motivation from the Ghouls is that for a while Satan wins. Yeah. Like that's just the flow, the ebb and flow of the universe. Sometimes evil wins, but it's one battle in the world of the whole war of life. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. The whole history of war of life, which we can win other battles of. So exactly. So let us know what you think. Remember to subscribe if you aren't already doing that, and follow us on the social media. We'll
respond awkwardly.
Yeah, we'll respond. Let us know what you think. We've been getting a lot of conversations, and some people who have been like, "Man, this is really bleak."
Yeah,
like, I know it sucks.
It is.
But it's not that forever. So that's just what horror is supposed to do. So don't get married.
Let your kids.
She literally did that. She literally did that, like a thing of popcorn. She was like,
"It's so don't like."
It was insane.
Yeah, just don't watch the movie if you don't want to see that, because that was a lot.
It was crazy. I was like, "That's not happening,"
and it was.
Alas, it was. So don't get married. She'll eat your kid, like a bag of popcorn. So, bye.
Bye.